Welcome to my channel, Bookish English. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you opened a book? Maybe yesterday, maybe last month, or maybe you can't even remember. But what if I told you that one simple habit, reading, could change everything? Your English, your mind, even your life. Stay with me till the end, because today I'll show you the real power of reading, how it can help you speak, think, and even dream in English. Let's begin. Chapter E, the first page that changes everything. Hello, my friend. Take a deep breath, because today we're not just talking about reading. We're talking about something that can truly change your English and maybe even your life. You see, most English learners focus on speaking. They want to talk fast, sound confident, use perfect words. And that's beautiful because speaking is the goal. But here's what many people forget. Before you speak beautifully, you must think beautifully. Before you say powerful words, you must feel those words. And reading, yes, reading is the bridge between your mind and your mouth. Let me tell you a little secret. When I first started teaching English, I met students who tried everything: grammar books, YouTube videos, vocabulary apps, conversation practice. But they were still stuck. They could understand a little, they could speak a little, but it didn't flow. They said things like, "Teacher, I know words, but I can't speak naturally. I understand you, but I can't answer fast. I study a lot, but English doesn't stay in my head." And I understood that feeling, because English, when learned only by rules, can feel heavy, like carrying a big dictionary everywhere you go. But then something beautiful happened. One of my students, Aisha, came to me one day. She looked excited. "Teacher," she said, "I started reading a short story in English, and something strange happened." I smiled and asked, "What happened?" She said, "I was reading, and suddenly I understood everything, not every single word, but the meaning, the feeling. It felt alive." That moment changed everything for her, because she wasn't just learning English, she was living English. Every page she read gave her new words, new emotions, new confidence. After 2 weeks, she came back and said, "Teacher, I don't know why, but now I can understand people when they speak English." That's the power of reading. It doesn't just help your eyes, it helps your ears, your tongue, your heart, and your brain. When you read, you don't just see words, you feel rhythm. You learn how sentences flow, how ideas connect, how emotions move through language. Reading teaches your brain the natural music of English without you even trying. Let me tell you another story. There was a man named Rafi. He was an engineer, very smart but shy. He said, "Teacher, I can read English articles for work, but I never speak." I asked him, "Do you enjoy reading?" He said, "Not really. It feels like homework." So I gave him a short story, a simple one, about a boy and his father. The next week, he came to class smiling. He said, "I read it 3 times, and I don't know why. I started talking to myself in English after that." You see, Rafi didn't practice speaking. He practiced feeling when he read that story, his mind opened. He wasn't memorizing, he was imagining. And when your mind starts to imagine in English, your mouth begins to follow. That's the secret connection. Reading builds your inner voice. And when your inner voice grows strong, your speaking becomes natural. Think about it. Children learn the same way. They listen, they see, they imagine stories, and slowly they begin to speak. Reading gives you that same gift, even as an adult. It builds a world inside you where English feels normal, safe, and alive. So, my friend, I want you to imagine something right now. Imagine holding your first English book. Maybe it's small. Maybe it has pictures. Maybe it's an ebook on your phone. You open the first page. You don't understand everything. And that's okay. You keep reading. You see a word you smile. Then another word, then a sentence, then suddenly a feeling. You realize you are not just reading English, you are feeling English. That moment, that very first page, can change your journey forever. Because from that page, you are no longer just a learner. You become a reader. And a reader is not just someone who studies English. A reader lives in English. So yes, you can practice speaking. You can listen to podcasts, you can repeat phrases, do all of that. But remember, when you open a book, you open a door to new thoughts, a door to confidence, a door to a new version of you. Before we move to the next chapter, I want to leave you with this thought. Reading is not about finishing. It's about starting a new way of thinking. Every page you read plants a small seed inside you, a seed of understanding, of emotion, of imagination, and one day that seed grows into fluent, natural speech. So, are you ready to open your first book? Close your eyes for a moment. Picture it in your hands. Feel the weight, the smell, the promise of something new. Because from this moment, learning is no longer about study. It's about living the language. Chapter R, How Reading Builds Your English Without You Knowing. Let me tell you something amazing. Your brain is learning English right now, even when you don't notice it. Yes, that's true. When you read in English, something beautiful happens deep inside your mind. You are not just seeing words, you are building connections. Your brain starts to recognize sounds, patterns, and meanings quietly, naturally, like magic. You don't have to force grammar. You don't have to memorize thousands of words, because when you read, your brain learns without pressure. It learns through rhythm, through context, through feelings. Let's imagine this together. You're reading a story. You see this sentence. She walked to the window and smiled at the morning light. Now, think about what happened. Without studying grammar rules, your brain just learned so many things. She walked, past tense. To the window, a preposition phrase, and smiled, two actions connected. At the morning light, description. You didn't open a grammar book, you didn't repeat drills, you felt the meaning. That's real learning, natural learning. When you read, your brain begins to notice patterns, just like a baby does when learning their first language. A baby never studies grammar, right? They listen, they feel, they repeat. You can do the same, but through reading is listening with your eyes. Let me share a personal story with you. Years ago, I wanted to learn Spanish. At first, I only used grammar books. I memorized verbs, rules, and word lists. I knew a lot about Spanish, but I couldn't speak or understand it well. Then one day, I decided to read a short story, very simple, for children. At first, I understood maybe Beifinger censure, but I kept reading. I didn't stop. And slowly, something started to change. I began to feel how sentences worked. I started recognizing words without translating them. And after 2 months, when I heard people speaking, I could suddenly understand. That's when I realized reading builds the foundation for every other skill. You read, you understand, you think Paxim, and then you speak. It's like watering a plant. You don't see it grow every day, but one morning, there it is, full of life. Now, let's compare two learners. The first one, Ali, studies grammar every night. He writes rules, he memorizes verbs, he takes notes. He knows a lot, but when he tries to speak, he stops. He thinks too much. Wait, is it I have went or I have gone? Okay. His brain is full of rules, not rhythm. The second learner, Sarah, doesn't study grammar much. She reads every night, short stories, blogs, even English subtitles. She doesn't translate every word, she just enjoys. After a few weeks, she begins to speak more easily. Not because she studied more, but because her brain heard English inside her head again and again. Sarah's brain became familiar with English rhythm, sentence music, and emotional tone. She didn't just learn words, she absorbed them, and that's why she improved faster. You see, reading is not just about learning English. It's about training your mind to think in English. When you read, you start to imagine pictures in your head. Your thoughts begin to flow in English. You stop translating, you start feeling. And when that happens, your confidence grows naturally. Confidence doesn't come from knowing every rule. It comes from trusting your understanding. When you read often, you build that trust. You begin to say, this sounds right, or that doesn't sound right. And that feeling, that natural sense is what fluent speakers have. I remember a student named Karim. He was quiet, shy, and afraid to make mistakes. He used to speak very slowly, thinking about every word. I gave him a simple task, read 2 minutes every night, no pressure, just read. 3 weeks later, he came to class and spoke without thinking. He said, "Teacher, I don't know what happened. My English just started flowing." That's the moment I call a spike moment, a sudden rise after silent growth. Because reading teaches you silently. You don't see the progress daily, but one day you just feel it. Every page you read builds invisible bridges in your brain. Bridges that connect ideas. Bridges that connect words and emotions. Bridges that lead to confidence. So the next time you open a book or even an English article, remember this: you are not wasting time. You are building fluency. You are feeding your brain with the language it needs to speak naturally. Reading is like breathing for your English. You may not notice it, but without it, your progress slows down. With it, you grow effortlessly. So, my friend, keep this promise to yourself. Every page you read is one more step toward fluency. Don't worry about understanding every word. Don't worry about finishing fast. Just read. Let English enter your eyes, your ears, your heart, because reading builds you quietly without you even knowing. And in the next chapter, I'll tell you exactly what to read and how to start easily. Even if you think reading English is hard, trust me, it's simpler than you imagine, And once you begin, you'll never want to stop. Don't worry if you think books are hard. Don't worry if you've never finished a book in English before. Because today we're going to start small enough that it feels easy, natural, and even fun. Reading English doesn't have to mean sitting with a big, heavy novel full of difficult words. It can start with something simple, a story that makes you smile, a few pages that make you curious, or even a comic that makes you laugh. The secret is not what kind of book you read, it's that you start reading. Let's begin gently. Here are some beautiful, simple kinds of books that are perfect for you, for anyone who wants to start living in English. Short stories are like small windows into big worlds. They're not too long. They don't need hours to finish. You can read one in a few minutes and still feel something powerful. Many of my students started with short stories, stories about love, friendship, courage, or dreams. They didn't understand every word, but they understood the feeling, and that's what matters most. Har, Freitisi. Comics and graphic stories. Comics are wonderful for beginners. Why? Because pictures help you see the story while you read. You don't have to imagine everything. The images guide you. When you read a comic, your brain connects words and pictures together. That makes learning faster and easier. I remember one of my students, Omar from Turkey. He never liked reading. He said, "Teacher, books make me sleepy." But one day he found an English comic about superheroes. He opened it just to look at the pictures. A few minutes later, he started reading the dialogue, and then he laughed. He laughed because he understood a joke in English he didn't translate, he just felt it. That moment changed him. He said, "Teacher, I didn't even know I could understand this much English." That's the moment I call a spike moment, the moment you realize I can actually do this. One comic, one smile, one break. And children's picture books. Some people think picture books are only for kids, but they're also perfect for language learners. They use simple, clear language. They repeat words naturally, and they tell stories full of emotion about love, friendship, kindness, dreams. When you read them, you don't just learn English. You learn to feel it again like a child. You see, children learn fast because they enjoy what they read. If you can bring that same feeling back, your English will grow faster than you imagine. Graded readers. Now, this is something special. Graded readers are books written especially for English learners. They come in different levels: beginner, intermediate, advanced. Each level uses words you already know, slowly adding new ones. They often include simple stories, sometimes even famous classics, rewritten in easy English. You can find them online or in libraries, and they're made for you. step by step, page by page. Wove. Fairy tales and familiar stories. Another beautiful way to start is by reading stories you already know in your own language, but this time in English. Stories like Cinderella, The Little Prince, Aladdin, or The Ugly Duckling. Because you already know the plot, your brain focuses more on the English, not on trying to understand what's happening. You recognize the characters, you know the ending. That gives you comfort and confidence. One of my students, Amina from Egypt, started this way. She loved Beauty and the Beast in Arabic, so she found the English version short and simple. At first, she only understood half, but she kept reading every night before bed. 2 weeks later, she told me, "Teacher, when I close my eyes, the story plays in my head, in English." Can you imagine that? That's when learning becomes living. Now let's talk about how to choose the right book. It's easy, just remember the Beifinger-Jolserwu rule. When you open a book, try reading a page. If you understand about Beifinger-Jolserwu of the words, not all, but most, that's your perfect level. If it's too easy, you'll get bored. If it's too hard, you'll get tired. But if it's just right, you'll enjoy it and you'll grow. Reading should feel like a gentle walk, not a mountain climb. You don't have to understand everything to enjoy the journey. You just have to keep walking one page at a time. And remember this, the goal is not to finish a book quickly. The goal is to feel English through it. When you read something and your heart reacts, you smile, you think, you wonder. That's real learning. That's your brain saying, I understand this world. So here's my invitation to you. Go find one easy book that makes you smile. It can be a short story, a comic, a children's book, or something you already love. Hold it in your hands or open it on your phone and just start. Don't worry about mistakes. Don't worry about hard words. Just read with your heart open, because that one small book can become your best teacher. It won't correct you. It won't judge you. It will guide you quietly, page by page. And one day you'll look back and realize that simple book was the beginning of your English transformation. You don't need to read fast. You don't need to read for hours. You just need to read every day. That's where the real magic begins. Learning English through reading is not about speed. It's about consistency. It's not about how many pages you finish. It's about how many days you show up, because fluency is not built in one big jump. It's built in 1,000 small steps. Let me tell you a story. There was a student of mine named Noor. When she joined my class, she said, "Teacher, I don't have time. I can't read every day." So I asked her, how much time do you have? She said, "Maybe 10 minutes before bed." And I smiled and said, "That's perfect. That's all you need." So Noor made a promise to herself, just 10 minutes of reading before sleep. The first night, she read one short story. The second night, she read a few pages. Some days, she was tired, but she still opened her book, even if it was only for 5 minutes. After 1 month, she came to class with a big smile. "Teacher," she said, "I don't know what happened, but now when I listen to English, I understand more. She didn't study grammar. She didn't memorize lists. She just read, and slowly her brain started to change quietly, naturally, beautifully. That's how grow that really happens. Not in a day, not in a week, but little by little every single day. Now let's look at another student, Ariel. He was very passionate, but only for 1 day a week. Every Sunday, he studied hard for 3 hours. He made notes, highlighted new words, repeated sentences, but after a few days, he forgot most of it. Why? Because language doesn't live in your memory, it lives in your daily life. When you touch English every day, even for 2 minutes, it stays alive inside you. But when you leave it for too long, it fades away. That's why small habits beat big plans. Think of it like this. If you water a plant every day, just a little, it grows strong. Its roots go deep, its leaves open to the sun. But if you forget it for a week and then pour a bucket of water, it can't absorb it all. The same is true for your English. You can't pour a language into your brain in 1 day. You have to feed it gently, 1 page at a time. That's the spike moment I love to talk about. The moment when small habits create a huge change. You don't see it every day. You might think, I'm not improving. But one morning, you'll read something in English and realize you didn't translate. You understood it naturally. That's when That's when you'll know the magic was working all along. Reading every day is not just a language exercise. It's a form of peace. It's your quiet time with yourself. You know? When you open a book, you leave the noise of the world for a little while. You enter another world in English, where you can relax, imagine, and grow. I'll tell you something personal. When I first started reading regularly, I didn't do it for learning. I did it for peace. I would sit by my window every morning with a cup of tea and open a small book. The world would still be quiet, and as I read, I felt my mind calm down. English words began to feel like music, soft, gentle, beautiful, and slowly I realized I wasn't just learning the language, I was learning myself. Reading became my calm space, my daily moment of stillness. That's what I want you to feel. Reading is not a race, it's a rhythm. The rhythm of learning, of feeling, of becoming fluent, naturally. So, my friend, if you want to grow in English, here's a simple promise to make to yourself. Read 1 page a day. Just one, no pressure, no guilt, even if you're tired, even if you're busy. Because 1 page a day keeps your English alive. It tells your brain, I'm still here, I'm still learning. And with every small step, you get closer to fluency, not through force, but through love. And here's the truth. Every page you read is a conversation between you and the language. Every page you finish whispers, you can do this. Every day you return your English. Thanks you, don't rush. Don't stop, just keep turning the pages. Because one day, without realizing it, you'll reach the end of a book in English. You'll smile and you'll know, this is how I changed. The magic was never in the book. It was always in you. Chapter Woo. How reading transforms the way you think. Have you ever noticed what happens in your mind when you read a story? Well, you are sitting in one place, Maybe in your room, maybe in a quiet corner of a cafe, but your mind is traveling. You see pictures, you feel emotions, you live in another world. That's the quiet magic of reading. It doesn't just teach you English, it teaches you how to think differently. When we read in English, something beautiful happens inside our brain. It begins to notice patterns, the way words connect, the rhythm of sentences, the rise and fall of emotions through phrases. Slowly, your brain starts to think in English, not just translate. You stop seeing words as separate pieces and start feeling them as living ideas. I've seen this happen again and again. One of my students, Hannah, told me something that surprised even her. She said, "Teacher, I think my brain is changing." When I asked her what she meant, she smiled and said, "I used to read words one by one, but now when I read, I see meaning. I don't even think in my language anymore." That's exactly what happens when you read often. You begin to see meaning instead of memorizing words. You start to connect feelings with expressions, and your mind naturally begins to think in English sentences, not forced, not studied, just flowing. Let me tell you a story, a true story, that still gives me chills every time I remember it. There was a student named Omar from Turkey. When he joined my online class, he told me, "I can't remember English words. I read, but I forget everything." I asked him what kind of reading he was doing. He said he was trying to read news articles every morning. I told him gently, "Omar, don't read what feels like work. Read what feels like life." So he started reading short stories before bed, small ones, just sand two, Sir pages. He read about friendship, love, hope, and small dreams. 2 weeks later, he sent me a message. "Teacher, I dreamed in English last night." That was his spike moment, a sign that his brain was finally connecting language to imagination. Reading had entered not only his mind, but his heart. That's the secret. Reading changes your thought world. When you read English stories, you begin to imagine in English. You don't just understand, you feel. You see pictures in your head, you hear voices of characters, you sense emotions between the lines, and that is how your brain rewires itself for fluency. Reading also builds empathy, the ability to understand what others feel. When you read stories, you live many lives. You become the hero, the friend, the traveler, the dreamer. You begin to understand why people think differently, why they love, why they fail, why they rise again. That emotional journey shapes your way of thinking. I remember reading a story called The Old Man and the Sea when I was learning another language. I didn't understand every word, but I understood the feeling. The old man's struggle, his silence, his hope, they all lived inside me. That story didn't just teach me words, it taught me patience and the beauty of quiet strength. That's what reading does. It changes the way you see the world. You become more patient. You listen more carefully. You start noticing small things, how people talk, how they feel, how they express. You start understanding that learning is not only about knowing, it's about feeling. One of my favorite moments in class is when students begin to express deep thoughts in simple English. I remember one day a shy student named Amina raised her hand and said softly, "Hey, teacher, when I read English stories, I feel I am not alone. The people in the books, they think like me." That sentence touched my heart because she was right. Books make us realize that human feelings are the same everywhere, in every language. And that's why I always tell my students, reading doesn't only improve your English, it improves your life. It gives you focus because reading makes you sit quietly and stay present. It gives you creativity because reading opens new worlds in your mind. It gives you patience because understanding takes time and every page teaches you to wait and grow. When you read every day, little by little, something changes inside you. You start thinking more clearly. You start speaking more confidently. And without realizing it, your English becomes part of your thoughts. Not something you study, but something you live. Books are mirrors and windows. They are mirrors because they show you yourself, your dreams, your struggles, your hopes. And they are windows because they let you see others, people from different worlds, different times, different hearts. When you look into a mirror, you find who you are. When you look through a window, you discover who you can become. And every page you read brings you closer to that discovery. So, tonight, when you open a book, even a small one, remember this. You are not just reading English. You are training your mind to think deeply, to dream widely, to live beautifully. You are building a new version of yourself. One word, one page, one story at a time. Because every book you read leaves a small light in your heart. And when you keep reading day after day, all those small lights begin to shine together until one day, you realize you are glowing from within. That is the real power of reading. Your reading journey begins now, so here we are at the end of this journey and also at the beginning of yours. You've learned how reading grows your vocabulary, improves your grammar, strengthens your confidence, and opens your heart. But before we close this final chapter, I want you to pause for a moment, take a deep breath, and ask yourself quietly, what will my story be? Because every English learner has a story. Some begin with fear, others with curiosity, and some with a small dream. I just want to speak fluently. But reading turns that small dream into something much greater. It doesn't just make you fluent, it changes who you are. I've seen it happen again and again. Let me tell you one last story. There was a student named Farah. When she joined my English class, she could barely speak. Every time I asked her a question, she looked down, nervous, her voice shaking. She told me, "Teacher, I understand a little, but when I try to speak, nothing comes out." I smiled and said, "Farah, don't worry. You don't need to talk yet. Just start reading." At first, she didn't believe me. "Reading, but I want to speak." I said, "Yes, but reading will teach you how to think in English. And when your mind thinks in English, your mouth will follow." So she started small. She read one story every night before bed, short, simple stories about life, friendship, and courage. At first, she only understood a few sentences, but she kept going every night, every single night. Weeks passed, then months, and one day something changed. She told me about it later with tears in her eyes. "Teacher," she said, "I went for a job interview today, and when they asked me questions in English, I didn't freeze. I didn't translate. I just spoke. The words came to me naturally, like I had been speaking all my life." That was her spike moment. That moment of quiet victory when all her nights of reading, all her silent learning came alive through her voice. That is the power of reading. It builds quiet confidence, the kind that doesn't shout but stays forever. Because reading doesn't teach you for a test, it teaches you for life. Every page you read is a conversation with your future self. Every story you finish is another step toward the person you are becoming. And here's something I want you to remember. Reading is not schoolwork, it's self-growth. It's not about finishing a book quickly. It's about letting a book finish something inside you: fear, doubt, hesitation, and open space for something new, courage, peace, and understanding. When you read in English, you are not memorizing, you are transforming. You are training your brain to see patterns, to love words, to trust your own voice. You are building a quiet strength that nobody can take away from you. Think about this. Every time you open a book, you are opening a door. Maybe today that door leads to a small story. Maybe tomorrow it leads to a new way of thinking. And someday it might lead you to a new life. Because when you read, you grow, and when you grow, your world grows with you. I still remember my own journey as a learner. I used to struggle too, sitting late at night with a small dictionary beside me, trying to make sense of words that felt like puzzles. But slowly, through stories, I stopped translating and started feeling the language. I began to understand that English wasn't just a subject, it was a way to connect hearts. And that's when everything changed. So if you are listening right now and thinking, can I really do this? The answer is yes, you can. You already have, because you've made it here to the end of this lesson. And that means something powerful. It means you care. You're not just learning English. You're becoming a new version of yourself, page by page. Reading will give you new eyes to see the world. You will start to notice how people express emotions, how ideas are formed, how wisdom hides between words. You will begin to see that every story you read is also a story about you, your hopes, your dreams, your struggles, your courage. And maybe, just maybe, one day you'll pick up a book and think, this is not hard anymore. This feels like home. That is the moment you'll know you've arrived. Because the goal is not to read fast or read perfectly. The goal is to connect with language, to connect with emotion, to connect with a part of yourself that is growing quietly, beautifully through every page. So here's my gentle challenge to you. Start tonight. Yes, tonight. Find one small story, one easy book, one page that feels simple enough to enjoy. Sit somewhere quiet. Turn off your phone and read just for a few minutes. Let the words enter your heart. Let the rhythm of English wash over your thoughts. And don't worry about understanding everything. Just feel it. Because your reading journey doesn't begin when you finish a book, it begins the moment you start. So tonight, start. Read for a few minutes and let your new life begin. Because somewhere inside those pages, the person you dream of becoming is already waiting for you. If this video touched your heart, don't just close it and move on. Take one small step right now. Open one page, read one paragraph, and feel the quiet magic begin. Because every big change starts small, with one choice, one page, one moment of courage. And if you want more lessons like this, lessons that help you not die, only learn English but live it, make sure to subscribe to this channel, like this video, and share your thoughts below. Tell me in the comments, what is the next English book you want to read? Remember, my friend, here we don't just study English. We grow with it. We learn slowly, we feel deeply, and we keep going, word by word, page by page together. So, go now. Find your book, open it, and let your new story begin.